Hello, hello, hello. Good afternoon and good morning, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever time it is that you're watching this video, whatever part of the world that you are. And I also want to wish you a happy new month because we're still in the early stages, the early days of October, my birth month. And many of you may know that today is my birthday and I have been inspired to give a birthday message. And today the message is entitled Garden of Hope. Garden of Hope. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of backstory about how this came to be, how this channel came to be, just to share a little bit of my testimony on my journey of healing and self-discovery. So just over a year ago, I developed this really strong interest in gardening, and this interest just came right out of the blue. Like, it just out of nowhere, one day I got up and I just had this strong desire. Like, the pull was so strong that it was one that I could not resist. And so I started looking at, tools and equipment that people use in gardening. I started buying stuff, bought my compost, I bought the seedling cups, and I bought tools. I just started buying everything, and I started just putting them down. I ordered grow bags, and it got so bad I ended up ordering a greenhouse, and then before you knew it, a couple of days later I ordered another one, until my son, oh gosh, he cautioned me. He said, "Mom, no more greenhouses. It's very claustrophobic outside." Mind you, he hardly goes outside in the backyard, but to be quite honest, there wasn't any more space for another one anyway. So what I ended up doing was use one for the nursery and one for when they began to mature. And I found myself watching video after video after video of people gardening, and this was hours on end, and I found it very intriguing. I found it quite interesting. It was like I was drawn to it, and I would just lie down and watch and watch and watch. And at least what I thought was just a simple, ordinary act, or me just pursuing an interest that I had, turned out to be another phase in my journey of healing. I didn't know anything about gardening, nothing at all I knew about gardening. And for the first time, that felt normal for me. It felt okay, because not knowing was a hard hat for me to wear. And I'll explain why I say that. So, for a couple of months, I was talking with a friend of mine, and I kept saying, oh, my seedlings, they're coming so great. My pepper seedlings, I have so much of them. I have 30, and they're coming along. Every time I go outside, it's like they've grown a little inch taller. And then one day I discovered, while watching a video of a gardener growing tomatoes, I said to myself, but hang on a minute. Why do these seedlings look so much like my seedlings? Oh, my seedlings tomatoes. Like, so for all these months, I've been thinking that these seedlings were pepper seeds. They're actually cherry tomatoes. And I just chuckled to myself. I laughed. But the not knowing was a very hard hat for me to wear, because growing up, I believed that if I didn't know, then I wasn't good enough. People had to perceive that I always knew, that I always had an answer, and if I didn't know, I would pretend to know. So much so that what I didn't realize was I was unknowingly developing a dangerous sense of confidence in myself and arrogance. I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't know what it was. So I grew up just thinking that it was okay. Yeah, you had to know. The only how people are going to take you seriously is if you know. And I didn't want people to see who Samantha really was. When people saw me, they would see this big, bright smile on my face. They saw this strong, confident person, but it was a front. It was a front. It was a facade, and a way to keep people at bay from really seeing what was actually going on underneath the surface. And in a space where I would spend hours at a time, 4 hours, 5 hours at a time gardening, I developed an even closer relationship with God. It was there that I learned about the many different ways that God communicates with us and how strategic He was in creation and how we are surrounded by His glory every single day, all around us, always. I love the ocean. The ocean was therapeutic for me. I would love to sit at the side of the sea and watch the waves come against the shore and roll back. For me, it felt like it was taking away my pain and it was taking it into the ocean. And it was just really calming for me to just watch the waves come in, crash, break, and roll back again. But sitting in nature now, with my hands in nature, now the closest I've ever come to gardening was when I was younger. One of our responsibilities as children was to weed up the yard. Pick up all the different weeds from the yard, make sure that the yard was clean and nice and spick, and so the smallest weed we had to pick up. So that's the closest I'd ever gotten to gardening. And now suddenly I was in this space with my hands submerged into dirt, really getting in connection with what I thought at the moment was just gardening, like I said, but it was so much greater than that. And that's how intentional our God is. It was through gardening where I saw how impatient and easily angered I was. I saw how superficial the idea of my strength was, because all the years of my life, I've always heard people tell me how strong I am. And whilst I didn't really believe in myself that I was strong and didn't really take it as a compliment, somewhere along the line it became superficial for me, like there's nothing I can go through thinking that it was me, myself. But it was the strength of God that was pushing me through every single situation, every single encounter, every single traumatic experience that I endured. It was God's strength and not mine. And my eyes began to open as I drew a clearer understanding on the different phases of life, what we go through, and the purpose and the benefits of each experience, and how it actually plays a part. And this is coming from a spiritual perspective as I develop the knowledge on the environment, the seasons of the year and their influence and impact on the stages of crop growth. And what I did was use that and applied it into my life, everyday life. How are my surroundings, the environments that I find myself in, the people that I'm surrounded by, the relationships that I have, the situations that I go through, the challenges that I face, how are they having an impact or an effect, positive or negative, on my personal self-growth? And I remember getting really, really discouraged one day as I was watching the snails and the bugs destroy my vegetation. I became infuriated. I was frustrated. I was disappointed, and I became extremely discouraged. And I abandoned the garden. I just left it. And for weeks, I neglected them of proper sunlight, proper of water, and they were exposed to extreme heat. Normally I would close the greenhouses and I would open them in the morning, give them water and everything. And then suddenly I was so discouraged. Like, they grew out of place, they got too big. There were seedlings that needed transplanting, there was soil that needed to be prepared. And there were pots that needed rearranging because everything was just all over the place. But every time I looked at it, I got even more discouraged. Like, I was intimidated by the state, the mess. It just knocked me off of my feet. And I left it. And then what started to happen was the discouragement seeped into my spiritual life. And it began affecting my perspective on work, the situations that I was enduring at work, and also in my daily life, And until one morning, the Lord woke me up. It was between 4 and 5 a.m. I got up, I did my morning devotion, did my Bible study, and it was like a voice, but like we were having a conversation in my mind, but I could hear the conversation. And he said, "Come, let's go outside, back to where we started, and let's try again, because you seem to have missed the message. You seem to have missed the lesson that I intended for you to learn." And so I got up and I went outside. From an early age, I developed a habit of being so many different things to so many people all the time. And what I didn't know was that at the time I was actually becoming a people pleaser. overcompensating myself in giving and trying to be everyone's hero simply because I desperately desired to have that hero in my own life. So I'm giving more of myself to others than what I'm actually giving to myself. I wanted someone to see my value. I wanted them to see the deep pain that was below the surface of my bright eyes and my broad smile. You know, people didn't see. They thought they knew me, but they still didn't, because I kept people at bay. I had a really, really hard time trusting people with my emotions. And to be honest, I was never taught. I didn't learn how to regulate my emotions. I didn't know how to address them, to deal with them, or to express them in a healthy way. So I kept it to myself, you know, and many may not know, if any at all, that to the point where I self-harmed. You know, when I was younger, I self-harmed. And it's something that I never shared with anyone, maybe just one person. And I attempted certain things, you know, and I'm not proud of it. This is not me saying that I'm proud of it, but it's part of the journey that I had to go through to get me to where I am now. And emotional neglect and abandonment, they cut deeper than a knife. Like a cut unattended, it festers and it affects. It infects the body, it infects the mind, it infects the soul, it infects the spirit, it infects everything. And without realizing, it changes your perspective on everything, on the way you see yourself, on the way you see others, on the way you see the world, on the way you perceive love, on the way you see everything. And what we don't recognize is we either become extremely vulnerable and develop tolerance to pain, hurt, and abuse wrapped in the same or an odd shape of what love is supposed to be, the love that you crave, like myself, or you become extremely cold and emotionally disconnected. You restrict yourself from becoming too close to others, you know, fostering close relationship. The minute you feel like you're getting too close to someone, that they're getting to know you too much, you begin to withdraw. Now, I didn't experience that aspect, but I began building walls. I built walls around myself, hoping to keep the weeds of hurt and disappointment out. And I can remember at one time, I think I was maybe about 14 or 15, I said to myself, I have had enough of people taking advantage of me. I'm not going to allow anybody to take advantage of me, to treat me the way they want to talk to me however they want to tell me I'm too emotional or I'm too sensitive, and I am not going to have it anymore. I have had enough. And I started building this core shell on the outside, but really on the inside, I was as soft and moist as a sponge when it's submerged in water. And another thing that happens to us that we don't realize is we become angry and defensive as our mind begins to trick us that we're in a battlefield, believing that we live in a battlefield, and so it requires us to constantly be in fight mode. We're constantly fighting until we realize that we've been at war with ourselves the whole time. This last year, I was forced to face the ugly, awfully fierce demon with 3 heads: neglect, abandonment, and rejection. I have lost many in the short space of 12 months. Yet, I have gained so much more than what the eye can see. Right now, I can still hear the chains falling from around my neck. The journey has been extremely transformational, this journey that I'm on, because healing and self-discovery, it's a journey, it's not a destination. I have learned how to become more calm, to be more soft, to be more gentle, to be more understanding, more loving, more kind, and most importantly, more patient. And all of these things I learned simply sat in a garden, tending to plants that I hoped to bear fruit. And then one day he said, every phase and every step of life that you go through, Samantha, it serves a purpose. Every challenge that you have encountered, they have all played a purpose and a part in your life's journey. He says things will not always be easy. They won't be great. And things aren't always going to go to plan. Sorry about that. And he said, things aren't always going to go to plan. But I allow these adversities, these trials and tribulations to shape you and to mold you into the person who I created you to be. He says, it is in these experiences that I answer your prayers for strength, for patience, for mercy, for courage, and for clarity, for better understanding, and for grace. Grace that we do not deserve. He says, this is how I clothe you with the fruit of my spirit that you ask for in prayer. And then he said, it is in those moments where you understand that it is I that is in control of all things, and there is nothing that you can do without me. That in me you shall have peace. In the world you shall have tribulations, but be not dismayed, for I have overcome the world. He said, Samantha, I have already gone before you and made the crooked path straight for you. Have faith in me. Trust my words, he says. Take heed to my guidance. Obey my instructions and keep your eyes upon me always. You cannot rush growth, he said. You must go through every stage of growth in order to bear good fruits in your life. Now, as I sit here today and I record this video, I look back in awe at the fruits of harvest. The fruits that have borne not only in my physical garden, but in my spiritual garden, in my heart, in my life, in my growth, in my development. I can see the fruits being born in my life. Psalms chapter 147 verse 3 says, He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. My Heavenly Father's love, it heals. As I studied the word today, the title spoke to me. It says value in unexpected places. And I stopped and I paused for a moment and I smiled to myself. The Holy Spirit has a character. He is a character. He has an extremely unique personality. And I smiled because I'd recently just wrote down how I had sought value in other people by just overcompensating. I didn't know how to say no. Like, it didn't matter what you asked of me, when you asked of me, how you asked it of me. I would just say yes. And I felt like that's what I always needed to do. I felt like no was me being rude. You know, that was me being selfish. I didn't understand that I was giving away more than what I had for myself, that my cup was empty, but I kept pouring into other people. And at the end of it, I had nothing left for myself. I desired to be everybody's hero, believing that if I can save someone from themselves, if I can save someone from a situation, if I can help them overcome a challenge in their life, somehow, just somehow, it will help me in mine. But I didn't realize that whilst I was giving all of this attention to others, I neglected my own self of the things that I actually needed. And that came from a place of conditioning, because I'd already become used to being neglected. So it was okay. I can neglect myself because others have neglected me. I can abandon myself and care for others because others have abandoned me. You know, I can reject myself and give attention to other people because I'm already used to being rejected. And he said, in all the familiar places where you have not found value, he says, I will make you find value in unexpected places, places where I will put you. So many of you now know a little bit of my story, a little bit of who I used to be and who I am growing to be becoming, the person I'm growing in faith, and how God is transforming me in a way that even myself, I cannot put into words. And now I am naked. I am naked. I am exposed. I feel vulnerable. And for the first time in my entire life, I'm not embarrassed and I'm not ashamed. I'm fine. I'm okay with people knowing who I used to be and who I am not anymore and who I am becoming. Because my nakedness is covered with the love and righteousness of my Father which is in heaven. I thank you for your time, for listening, for taking the time to listen. If you watch straight through till the end, thank you. I pray that something that I said resonated with you. I pray that you have truly been inspired, that you have been empowered, that you have been motivated, that something that there is a stirring that has taken place in your life that is causing you to want to embark on a journey of healing and self-discovery through the love of Christ. Because it is only He that can heal us, completely heal us emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally, and psychologically. Be blessed. Thank you everyone for listening. And until next time, take care of yourself.